Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 69 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. And today I am now joined by my illustrious colleague.
You said 69.
I sure did, didn't I? I was about to comment, I've called you illustrious 3 times in a row. I should stop doing that after that comment. But Raptor is joining us here again. How you doing today, Raptor?
Had better days, but it's always good to be here.
Absolutely, and hopefully talking about Power Rangers will perk up anybody's day. I know it does mine.
Yeah, same here.
Unless we talk about the new Saban era. But, in any case, Raptor, a little bit of house clean right here because one of our fans from our Facebook page posted a question about a month ago. His name is, and I hope I pronounced this right, Suth Van Truong. And I apologize if I got that name wrong there. But Suth basically wanted me to talk about basically a lack of absence of Asian red Power Rangers in Power Rangers history. So now that we finally got around to it, we're going to address Suth's question here and talk about the lack of Asian Red Rangers in Power Rangers. And I guess to a greater extent, a lack of minorities in certain Ranger positions and tokenism in Power Rangers.
Yes.
So I want to open this by making one interesting point. When we found out Saban was going to reacquire the rights to Power Rangers and they were going to adapt Shinkanger, what a lot of people on at least Ranger Board were clamoring for was the idea that the Red Ranger would be Asian, specifically Japanese. Mm-hmm. Because one of the main issues that was supposedly brought up why Disney did not adapt Shinkanger at the time is because it was too Japanese.
Yes.
And what a lot of people thought to counter this is to put a Japanese Red Ranger in the main role, and then you can have the other Rangers, non-white, black, Hispanic, whatever you want, or non-Asian, excuse me.
Yeah.
Black, Asian, or Hispanic. You can you make them any race that you want, but you have the Red Ranger who is there to fulfill the role of the actual samurai, teach the samurai ways.
And since his American teammates.
Yes, and since he is Japanese, it is credible that he knows.
It is thematically appropriate for him to be familiar with the samurai powers and the samurai history and the samurai techniques.
Exactly. But instead we got Jaden, and we know how that turned out.
Yeah, the white guy with a Japanese last name.
Yes.
And so if we want to go off of a bad technicality, we have had an Asian Red Ranger.
Yeah, but Suth doesn't count as such. Neither do I.
I'm not saying that it counts. It's
absolutely
it's dumb technicality.
Yeah, but I just want to kind of get that story out of the way so we can kind of pave the road here, because my biggest issue when it comes to, and I'm going to use the term tokenism here, because I think if you're going to have a Ranger of any ethnicity, minority, wherever you want to go ahead and call it, you don't throw them in there just because you have to have a black guy in the season. Because that's where we get Token from South Park. If you're going to put them in there, you have to have a reason, not so much that they're a reason that they're black, but don't throw them in there to be the black guy, if that makes any sense.
Yes, they need to be there as a character and have defining qualities other than their race.
Absolutely. And in the case of an Asian Red Ranger, if we put him in there, we don't turn him into a stereotype like Toshi on American Dad or anything. But if you're going to have a samurai theme series, make him Japanese.
And that's thematically appropriate
to
have a specifically Asian Red Ranger.
Absolutely. Now, can we still have a Red Ranger who's Asian, but his character is not informed by the fact that he's Asian? I think so.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
We've had African American Red Rangers who weren't defined by their color.
Absolutely. Because I think that's where the situation gets very sticky.
Then whatever ethnicity that Nick was supposed to be in Mystic Force. Was it Nick? That was his name?
Yeah, Nick. No, yeah, Nick, or Bowen, however you want to go ahead and put it.
Yeah.
I mean, the weird thing about Power Rangers, let's take it back to Super Sentai, because Super Sentai, they're all Asian. And that's not a big deal, you know. Yeah, you get a couple of, quote, Chinese characters, but they're played by Japanese people anyway.
In the grand history, we have had one non-Asian Ranger.
Yes, thank you, Ramirez, and he was awesome. But in Power Rangers, because it's in America, because it's a melting pot, you can't have an all-white cast. You can't have an all-black cast. You have to have some sort of diversity in there. And I think the problem is that they're looking at diversity. We have to have it, but they're starting to define roles that can and cannot go to certain ethnicities. And I'll bring this up. Pink Rangers. To this point, no African American Pink Rangers ever.
Yeah, which is something I had never thought about before until you brought it up.
Yeah, and I didn't bring it up until somebody told me. And that's like, when you actually look at the history of Power Rangers, just about every color's had a mixture of minorities in there. We've only had one Asian Yellow Ranger, but that's to be expected, I guess, with the way some people view it. But we've had like tons of Asians as Blue Rangers.
Pink Rangers.
Yeah, Pink Rangers.
Has there been a green Asian Ranger? Or Asian Green Ranger?
Asian Green Ranger. Cam.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there's Cam and all that. And we'll talk about those characters, the Asian characters that have existed in the series before. But I primarily want to go ahead and talk about, I know Suth is asking us about the Red Rangers and Asian, but I think it's part of a bigger, not so much symptom, but a bigger topic of discussion.
Yes, exactly.
Because, let's look at the casting sides we talked about in Dino Thunder the other day. It says any ethnicity.
Yeah, there was no single character that had to be defined by their race.
Exactly. Although an Asian cowboy would be hard to... Wouldn't you think?
I don't know. I mean, in my rural town, we had...
Well, what was that in that Skittles commercial? The Korean guy with the Scottish accent and the bagpipes. Embrace the absurdity or something like that.
Well, I mean, heck, in the rural town I grew up in, there was a girl that was Korean, but that was because she was adopted, and
Oh, well...
I know.
Yeah, okay. But the point is, it says any ethnicity, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to go ahead and limit who's going to get picked as what. And let's use the Pink Ranger, for example, right here. Because there is going to be one girl until we get to Violet and down the line and stuff like that. Yeah. And basically whoever this girl is going to be the marketing image of the Power Ranger female for this season.
Yes.
And when it comes to that, let's be completely honest. You see blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls, or attractive Asian girls, or even brunettes with curly hair. There is this image you have of the singular female amongst the group.
Yeah, let's go back to teams with singular females here.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just go back into City.
Let's look at Dino Thunder. That's one of your favorites.
Yeah, blonde-haired white girl.
Exactly.
Ninja Storm.
Blonde-haired white girl. Jungle
Fury.
Blonde-haired white girl.
And those are really the only Power Rangers teams with singular females.
Yeah, that I can think. Well, you look at Alien Rangers, but again, they're aliens. So she was Indian, I think.
She was?
I think Delphine was Indian. I could be wrong. But that's the point I'm trying to go ahead and make, is that they've had the opportunity to cast minorities in single female roles like that. Single as in they're only one on the team, but they haven't taken that opportunity
single white
to...
female.
You're just having fun with this tonight. I want to say that I think the producers are diverse enough that they'll have some African American girls audition for the role, but I really
let's talk about that lack of African Americans in the Pink Ranger role. Okay,
I mean, why is it? That would be the main question.
Yeah, so typically, and as it was pointed out in the comments on our Dino Charge Casting Size podcast, we have had tomboyish pinks, Vita and Mystic Force.
I never looked at her as a tomboy, but I guess other people can view that as such.
Personally, I think she's gay, but that's just me.
All right.
But anyways, typically, the pink is feminine in both Sentai and Power Rangers.
Absolutely, because pink is such a feminine color.
Yeah.
Or at least it's perceived to be.
I mean, sometimes they'll be equally feminine, such as Turbo/Space.
Yeah, like with Ashley and Cassie and all that. I mean, usually what you do is you either have the two, quote, girly girls, or you have the one girly girl, such as Dana, and the tomboyish one, like Kelsey. You usually have that dynamic to show the different spectrums of female characters.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're running into a stereotype here.
Well, I mean, it's not so much a stereotype as that's established fact in
Power
Rangers.
A stereotype in that there has not been African American pink.
Well, absolutely, and the question is, why is that? Again, I think I can understand when we have a group of, let me put it this way, again, like we have the singular female, because they want to kind of make her stand out, and when it's the only female, blonde hair, blue eyed, that's kind of the thing.
Dilute the pool, if that makes sense.
I think I get what you're saying, stuff. I mean, let me ask this, Raptor, and it's a straight up question here. Do you think that there is an element of racism going on in that regard of no pink Black Rangers?
Okay, so I'm going to harken back to our ethnocentrism and Super Sentai podcast.
Okay.
I think that Power Rangers has never been guilty of explicit racism other than accidental in Season 1.
And Zeo. Tommy, the Native American.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really don't consider that one because he's not...
That was retconned when you think about it.
Well, yeah, it was retconned, and he doesn't appear it. Because when you look at him, you wouldn't guess that he's Native American.
But even the Native American story arc that they had going throughout the season? That doesn't...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, the first couple of seasons up into Zeo, they were a little fishy. Although nobody ever says anything about Will in Operation Overdrive. I find that odd.
Yeah, I haven't watched enough of Operation Overdrive. Is anything ever made of that?
His catchphrase in the first episode is, "It's slammer time."
But does he drop that afterwards?
Yes, but still.
Oh, also, he's a black guy, and he's a thief.
Yes.
That's
okay.
That's kind of...
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I was really groaning in that. Okay, but to your point.
Where was I going? Yeah, Power Rangers has been pretty racially sensitive. I mean, the issue of race doesn't come up often, but most often, characters are allowed to be characters on their own and not be defined by their race.
Absolutely. Now, we do have, like, holiday specials where you had that one character with...
who's Jewish.
Who's Jewish, and then you got Tanya celebrating Kwanzaa and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there are instances of that.
But that doesn't define their entire character. That's
exactly. Yeah. And even being Native American did not define Tommy's character.
Because he exists as a character for...
Yeah. Now, Trini, the thing about her is, like, being Asian did enforce some of her character with her gung-ho kind of stuff and like martial arts teachings in a way, because like she got from an Asian master and whatnot. And I guess Billy with the hip-hop Aikido kind of stuff. I mean, again, those are very benign ways of looking at it, but it's not like saying, like Cisco in Deep Space Nine. It's like, I don't want to go in the Vic Fontaines because in the 1960s, black people were not allowed in there. Therefore, I will not share in this game because I am offended. It's not like that type of racism, I guess.
Wow, I need to watch more of DS9.
Yes, you should. But, you know, the whole thing is like, it informed them benignly, but again, as we get on through the rest of the series, look at TJ. Nothing about him is informed by him being African American at all. No, he's just TJ. That's the thing. And you could, swap. I mean, if you swap out another actor, it'd be different, but it's still TJ. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
it's not evidence of tokenism. Because here's the thing about Power Rangers: if you do look at every season up to Ninja Storm primarily, they had one African American character in there, typically male. I think Aisha and Tanya were the only exceptions.
And
Katie.
Yes.
Yeah, and Katie. But primarily it was a male character within the series. And then when they got to Ninja Storm, they didn't have an African American character, but they did put a couple minorities in there.
Exactly.
Asian, whatever Shane is, I think he's Polynesian.
Once we get
Blake
to the Disney era and filming in New Zealand, you get a lot of muddled ethnicity.
A lot more diversity, believe it or not.
Well, I mean, look at Mystic Force.
Yeah, people are from all around in that show.
Yeah, but just like looking at Vita and Nick and what was her sister's name again?
Madison.
Yeah, Madison.
And Daggeron.
Yeah, what ethnicities are they?
But, well, I would argue, too, it doesn't matter what that
is. I know. It's what TV tropes would call ambiguously brown.
Well, at least somebody has a name for it. Now, I feel like we're kind of talking in circles right here, and I know what our original point was, and again, Suth, I apologize. It just seems like this is a broader thing to talk about because it's curious.
Mm-hmm.
It's curious that a show that's on for 20 years that essentially changes its cast out every year.
Yes.
Can run into these running themes. Like, for 2 years straight, we had an African-American character as the Green Ranger. We had tons of Asian Blue Rangers, Dax.
Yeah, so I think there are implicit stereotypes here at play.
Yeah.
Because what does a blue often serve? What role?
I would say more of the
smart guy.
In some cases, comedic foil.
Yeah,
Dax was comedic. I think Thea was a bit comedic. Chad was kind of not so much comedic as much as he was reactive and dumb in some cases. But their Blue's basically been there for comedy roles of late, I think. But I can think of 4 Asian guys that played Blue Rangers within the series. Now, is that a trope? Is that some sort of racism that you have to have a...
I think it's not... I don't think it's explicit racism. What I think it is, it's just an inherent stereotype. Asian guys in probably the minds of Power Rangers producers, and I don't think they're actively thinking about this. But the stereotype is that they're meeker than white guys or black guys.
I find that odd since it's the... And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I would find that particularly odd.
Please don't think that I'm actually asserting this, because that's not what I believe at all.
Yeah, because if you look, the whole Sentai team, they're all strong to their own degree. You know?
Right, but that's not dealing with the implications of Asian American stereotypes.
True. I guess
and so that's could be the reason why we've never had an Asian rep.
So are you implying that it's just like the producers are feeling that the character would not be strong enough if he was...
But I don't think it's a thought they're actively processing.
I see what you're saying, yeah. Because it's almost like, and I guess this would be the stereotype, it's like you can't Samuel L. Jackson in your movie to be the badass, and it has a lot to do with him being black in a lot of ways.
And the African-American Red Rangers, that's going off of the stereotype as the authoritative black leader guy.
And Jack was definitely that. Let's be honest. He was very authoritative.
And Scott, to a lesser extent, TJ wasn't authoritative. He was a rather laid-back, fun guy.
Yeah, but TJ was just an all-around good character. And of course, he had to be put in the background because eventually he was going to be Blue Ranger in the next season. And it wasn't even second in command in space because of the footage. But
yeah,
in any case.
And I'm just going to continue on this.
Okay, here. Yeah, go ahead.
Implicitly, and when I say implicit, I mean something that someone's not thinking about. I think this could be our explanation for why we've never had an African-American Pink.
Okay.
Because the implicit stereotype is that black women are either more rough and tumble or more sassy. And again...
So, okay, I see where you're going here. Because the Pink Ranger is usually the apex of femininity.
Yes.
They're not putting...
With the tomboy as a foil.
I see what you're saying, because actually if we do look at the comparisons of African-American females on Power Rangers and their female counterparts, we got Aisha and Kimberly, who was the more feminine there. Definitely Kimberly. Then you got Tanya and Catherine. Catherine definitely more
feminine, and then Katie and Jen. Even though Jen was more of a hard ass than Katie was, but she's definitely more feminine.
Yeah, let's also point out Katie always wore pants and Jen always wore a skirt.
Exactly.
So that's another thing. So I get where you're going with that. And that's a legitimate, I'm not going to say reason, but it's a legitimate thought to have. That if people do think of that, because, I would say that a lot of the characters we've had, African American females and Power Rangers, are feminine, but yes, when you compare them to their Pink Ranger counterparts,
they're the less feminine one on the team. And so, although I will point out one exception where the white girl was the less feminine of the two.
Okay.
Wild Force. Because, I guess Alyssa.
Uh-huh. No, I would say she was more feminine than Taylor. Taylor was.
That's what I'm saying. Taylor is white as can be. She's freaking.
Oh, I see. Okay, I get what you're saying and all that.
Yeah, she's
the blonde hair girl. And what they did is they changed her hairstyle halfway through the season to soften her up. Basically, if you watch the early episodes where she has like the ponytail and everything, she's really aggressive. But once she gets the different hairstyle and after she meets Eric, she's a lot more docile, I would say.
Yeah, but for a good majority of the series, hard ass. But
yeah.
I know we're going around in circles. We've already made the point about implicit accidental racism, but I'm going to harken back to Suth's original point. He said in his Facebook post that he felt discouraged growing up because he is Asian himself and was never able to look to Power Rangers and see someone like him leading the team.
And I think that's what it's all about, because let's go back to a Star Trek example. Let's talk about Nichelle Nichols. Because
exactly.
the classic story was she felt underutilized on the show, didn't think she was doing anything, wanted to quit. She met with Martin Luther King Jr., who basically told her, stay on the show because you're a positive influence on young African-American girls.
And perfect example, Whoopi Goldberg reported that Lieutenant Uhura was her inspiration to become an actress.
And then she twisted Jean's arm to get on Next Generation, and we got Guinan, which is awesome. So,
well, she was also a pretty big star at the time because she had just come off an Oscar.
Well, she had to talk Jean in to get on the show because Jean's whole thing was like, but you're too good for Star Trek. And she's like, well, I'm too good, but that means I can now pick whatever I want to do. So,
yeah,
But yeah, and I completely agree with his point, because, here's the thing. Raptor, you and I are both white males. There are a lot of characters, Tommy, Jason specific, that we can look to, because when I was a kid, everybody wanted to be the Green Ranger. Then everybody wanted to be the White Ranger. I remember when we were kids, I was upset when I had to be the Black Ranger. That was Adam, of course, that time, because that was when the movie came out with the frog.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to be the damn frog. Because everybody made fun of the frog back then.
Of course, in my adult years, and now that I've become a bit of a weeaboo and adore Johnny Young Bosch's role in anime, I would love to be Johnny Young Bosch.
Well, back in 1995, it wasn't as cool as being the Red Ranger or the White Ranger or even the Blue Ranger at that time.
Yeah, and before we close this off, I want to share a story.
Okay, let's talk about some. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was at a conference for my entertainment job.
Yeah, that was the one in California, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I attended a workshop on promoting diversity in your programming at your school.
Okay.
It was hosted by an Asian guy.
Okay.
His name was Simon. He's actually he fronts a really cool band called the Slants. It's a band of all Asian guys. I know.
Well, at least they're calling it that.
I know. They had a fight with the patent office over that name.
Really?
But anyways, he shared how growing up, he was never able, because he grew up in America. He's not...
Yeah, he sounds Asian American. Yeah.
Exactly. His name's Simon.
Yeah.
And he said that growing up, he never felt like he had someone to identify with on television because he wasn't seeing people that were like him.
Yeah.
Because despite the fact that people will say that, it shouldn't be defined by race, who you look up to, the point is, when you're looking at television and you see someone that looks like you, someone you identify with, it's good. It feels cool to see them doing cool things because that makes it feel like you can do those things. Because this person that's like me is, to harken back to Whoopi Goldberg, this person who is like her is piloting. Well, not piloting.
She was a communications officer,
but she's part of Earth's delegation to the rest of the galaxy.
Exactly, on a primetime show on was it NBC, CBS, on CBS.
Exactly.
It was a big thing back then, and I definitely understand his point. I think it's exactly what Suth is trying to say in his argument, because I'm thinking here. Besides the Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, I can't think of many television shows at the time, at least when I grew up, and I don't know how old Suth is and all that, but even going back, that had a lot that had positive Asian role models like that. Because before that, you got Charlie Chan and the Chan Gang, and that's incredibly racist.
That Asian guy in Breakfast at Tiffany's,
Mickey Rooney, which by the way he passed away the other day, so.
Moment of silence.
Yeah, Mickey Rooney was great. But yeah, that's the point. I up until again, Mystery Files Shelby Woo, where they had the girl as the main lead.
I can't even think of a concurrent TV show. Maybe I just need to watch.
We don't watch much television nowadays, anyway, as it is. I mean, yeah, I can't think of anybody. And heck, with the new Godzilla movie coming out, Bryan Cranston's the main character and stuff.
Yeah, along with Aaron Taylor Johnston and Elizabeth Olsen.
All whiteys. Yeah.
I mean...
Even a Japanese-created entity has
Ken Watanabe is in the film, but he hasn't been at the forefront of promotion like the other three have.
Yeah. And when he was in forefront of Batman Begins promotion, it turned out to be a lie.
Exactly.
Yeah. So... I think this is a discussion that has broad implications more than just Asian Red Rangers. And I like the opportunity we got to talk about it because it does come down to tokenism and representation.
Exactly.
But I want to end on this question. Do you think the fact that Power Rangers Samurai has one Japanese character who happens to be the Pink Ranger.
Isn't her last name Wong?
Well, not to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wong is the last
Fong
name.
is her.
Fong is her.
All
right, anyways.
But one Japanese character on a Japanese-based team. Do you think that is insulting to people like Suth and to the Japanese community?
I can't quite say if it would be an insult to Japanese American people, but I'm not Japanese American.
To me, it sounds like it's co-opting your cultural identity.
What I do say is a disservice to the culture.
I think that's that's probably the better way to say it, because I find it odd that we have a bunch of white, black, and
because
people,
if you think about it, it's that the culture was not really utilized. They don't call them kanji that the Rangers were doing. Yeah, they're just power symbols.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, they didn't try to censor them out, but they didn't acknowledge what they actually were either. So I think it was a bit of a disservice to the culture. But there may be someone who felt a bit hurt by the depiction or lack of Japanese people in the series.
Yeah, absolutely, because again, something that is inherently Japanese, which that's the whole reason Disney shied away from it, is because it was, again, too Japanese. And I don't know, I mean, again, I think...
It's more glaring in Samurai than it would have been in Megaforce or RPM.
Yeah, because again, those are not inherently Japanese. Because the thing about Shinkanger and to an extent Kaku Ranger back in the day was it's a celebration of Japanese culture.
Yeah, they're often called the most blatantly Japanese of the Sentai series.
Exactly. But I could definitely see where it would be, again, probably not as offensive, but upsetting to a lot of people.
Exactly.
And I think we're going to get an Asian Red Ranger because let's be honest here. Even if the show goes on for another 20 years or more, you can't tell me that in a 40-year show you can't get one Asian Red Ranger in there.
Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. how many good Asian actors there are in either Hollywood or New Zealand or anywhere in between. But I'm sure
skilled Asian actors.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, well, compared to the number of white counterparts that they are up against would be the thing. Because I think that also comes into it too. But
let's consider for a moment to harken back to Star Trek once again.
Yeah.
George Takei reported that nearly every Asian American actor in Hollywood wanted the role of Sulu because the way the character was written in the casting sides, the only non-stereotypical Asian character on television at the time.
Do you think
So let that simmer for a moment.
To that point, since we just, again, going back to the casting sides, do you think they would have to write a casting side for Asian just to get the numbers in there to so they can commit to it, I guess? Saying, okay, we're going to have an Asian Red Ranger, let's put in the sides, must be Asian ethnicity to get them in there. Because I'm thinking that might be the best way to get it casted.
It would be, but at that point, it is blatant tokenism. Unless there is a good story reason for it, other than just, we don't have a black guy on the team. We're gonna say this guy needs to be black. There's no reason for him to be black. We're just gonna have him be black.
But of course, in Samurai, that would have made sense. If you got a show called Power Rangers Samurai and your side is for an Asian actor,
but as I said, that's story appropriate.
Exactly. And right now, there is no Sentai that I think would be story appropriate. Maybe Tokuger, because they're talking about like the Japanese trains and the stuff associated with that. But that's very loose. If
Dino Charge runs for 2 years, I bet Tokyo will be skipped.
We'll see about that. But, I just want to address Suth. I hope we addressed your question. Again, I felt we got away from it a little bit.
We went in circles.
Yeah, and I apologize for it, but this is just a meaty topic that I think goes beyond just Asian Red Rangers, like we said, Black, Pink Rangers, and really all ethnicities and all that. Maybe we'll do another video on this sometime in the future, talk about things we did, maybe get somebody else in, like DJ, to talk about it. But I think this is a discussion that is far beyond, I think, our ability to really dissect it appropriately.
Exactly.
And just kind of far-reaching as to what it says about Power Rangers, I think, as a franchise, because it makes Power Rangers look less progressive than other shows in a lot of ways.
Which is a bit of a shame, because Power Rangers has been pretty inclusive over the years.
Yeah, and I think that only recently it's come under fire once. Again, it's been 20 years, and certain things have not happened, and many things have repeated.
And then we had that Zordon is a racist college humor video.
Yes, which really brought, I think, a lot of light to, things we already knew, but just really put in very harsh tones, like, oh yeah, that's right. But Raptor, I want to thank you for joining me, and again, at least getting the tip of the iceberg on this conversation.
Yeah, exactly, and I do enjoy these more meaty conversations.
Absolutely, as do I. It's always fun to talk about the story and characters than it is what Zord looks cool this week, which we still like to do.
Of course.
But I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank you guys for listening. Suth, thank you again for sending in the question. And if you guys have any questions or any topic discussions, feel free to leave them on the Facebook page, the Twitter account, or the comments. I know I'm really bad about getting back to you guys on that, but I only have 4 more weeks of school left, so here's hoping. But exactly. I will make an attempt to get to everybody's question because you guys took the time to write it. I'm going to at least take the time to answer it in some capacity.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you guys for listening. Have a good evening. And the tavern is now closed.